Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Zionism and Israel. To preface, I have to say Zionist and Zionism in order to not get banned on YouTube. You guys know what I mean when I say it though. I'm not literally talking about Zionists sometimes. Sometimes I am when I talk about like the leftist view. But yeah, I'm talking about like, you guys ever like apple juice boxes? Anyways, that's what I'm talking about. Moving on, Zionism. I'm just going to give my overall thoughts. A lot of it is going to be thoughts on people misunderstanding the issue, leftists misunderstanding the issue, the rise and normalization of anti-Zionism, why people are blinded by Zionists, by the truth, and why seemingly it's a bipartisan issue for young people to be against it and for older people and politicians to be for it. Either way, people are completely for it or completely against it, no matter the side. It's interesting because all the politicians are completely for it, all the young people are completely against it, and all the boomers are completely for it. There's no in between. No matter your demographic, you're either completely for it or completely against it. It's a bipartisan issue, not split by the parties. Parties disagree on everything, literally everything, except Israel. This goes for the politicians who are clearly being lobbied to support Israel. Obviously, they're going to support it no matter what their party is. Then you look at young people completely against it. I'm sorry, if you are a young person who is pro-Israel, you're probably like 5% of young people, 5 to 10%, very low. Both right-wing Republicans and left-wing Democrats are completely against it if they are Gen Z. That's probably because of how accessible information is, because we actually know it through free speech sites. We're able to access these free speech sites, like forums or X. Maybe it is propaganda, maybe it's psyops, but who even would be psyoping us? I don't know. The people who own all the social medias are Zionists themselves. Elon Musk owns the biggest free speech platform in X. He's a Zionist. Larry Ellison owns TikTok. He's extremely pro-Zionist. So who exactly is psyoping us? I see that a lot. I think when free speech grows, anti-Zionist rhetoric grows because it's simply the truth. The truth will prevail when speech is allowed. People are pro-Israel when we pay them, feed them slop, and put pro-Israel propaganda in Hollywood movies. But free speech comes with anti-Israel beliefs. Very widespread too, probably 90% of Gen Z. What I want to talk about first is probably the politicians. Basically, every position of power supports Israel. I believe it is something like 90+% of politicians who are being lobbied and funded by AIPAC. AIPAC is a lobbying organization that lobbies for politicians on behalf of Israel. Over 90% of the politicians they fund win. That is an issue. We saw recently a case of this with Thomas Massie, who's been in office for 14 years and recently got kicked out of Congress because AIPAC put up the most money they ever have to make the other person win and support Israel. This happened because Thomas Massie was one of the few people in Congress actually voting against Israel, and against Israel as a Republican, which was even more rare. That's a great example of lobbying money for Israel. These politicians all support Israel. It's the one bipartisan issue for politicians. Name another one. They disagree on immigration, abortion, anything you can come up with politically. They disagree on foreign policy too, like Russia, Ukraine conflict. But Israel? No, they all support it. This isn't only for politicians, this is for anyone with power in the United States. I'm talking specifically about the United States because it's what I know most about. However, it is important to note that Zionism is a transnational group. The reason they are so different than every other group, the reason they have all this power, is because they are a transnational group of people. You have Zionists in Europe, and they are still supporting Israel. Their interests are pro-Israel, no matter where they are. The best outcome possible for Israel. That's their interest. That's the same interest people in the United States have who are Zionists. Their interest is for a foreign country, Israel. These people get power in both, whether it's through lobbying in the United States or whatever in Europe, and now you have two countries supporting a foreign nation. That is an issue, and that's just really them being smart, Zionists being smart. You can't hate on it to an extent. You can, but like maybe in our country we shouldn't allow people to support foreign countries. It's kind of our fault. Compare this to any other faction of the oligarchy. Zionism is a faction of the oligarchy. People who support Israel, people who ideology is Israel's benefit. Compare that to somebody pro-American or somebody who's pro another country. Somebody who's actually America first and wants America to be best. If he has power, let's say he's a politician, that power is limited to power in America. We don't have pro-America people going to Europe, getting power, and then supporting America from there. That transnational thing really is huge, and not a lot of people talk about it, especially on the left. The left are really wrong about the Israel thing. It's kind of bad. They're almost a net negative. They're against Israel, but they're completely wrong about every single reason as to why. They blindly support Zionist propaganda. They really dislike Israel, then go and support abortion, which is Zionist propaganda. They support mass migration, also Zionist propaganda. So it's like, you're against Israel, that's really based, but you're wrong about literally everything. You believe literally everything the Zionists tell you except Israel because brown kids are dying. They psyoped you so far to the point where you're against Israel. They psyoped you into believing these third worlders are like angels so badly that they accidentally made you hate Israel in the process. But you still believe every other thing the Zionists tell you. The left are completely wrong about this. It's really not good. They'll be critical of Israel, but when it comes to the Epstein files, which is a very clear-cut case of Israel's influence in America, they missed the point. Jeffrey Epstein was blackmailing people on behalf of Israel. It's so clear and it's so obvious and it's such a slam dunk. Donald Trump himself is compromised. He's in the Epstein files. But then you see liberals talk about that, talk about Trump being in the Epstein files, and they're just completely off. They see people being blackmailed for Israel and they say, Donald Trump is like a pedophile. The issue with the Epstein files isn't Donald Trump is some evil, murdering pedophile. That is not the issue. The issue is that our politicians and people in power were being blackmailed on behalf of Israel to support Israel. And when people make these extreme conspiracy theories, it makes the issue look insane. It makes it look false. It's bad for the movement. That is the issue. Liberals really do tick me off because they're so wrong. It's like in math. You do the wrong work, but get the right answer. That's what the liberals are doing. They're doing all the wrong work, but then brown equal impressed. So Israel bad. They got the right answer accidentally. The leftist view is so wrong, they think Israel is bad because they're colonizers, and the Palestinians never do wrong. They think Palestinians are like ideologically perfect people who support everything we support. Meanwhile, they would be killed in Palestine for being gay. I don't know if it's a hot take, but both Muslims and Zionists are bad and should not have influence in America. The issue is that Muslims don't have influence in America, so it's really a non-issue. They shouldn't be in America, and they really aren't. They're less than 1% of the population. Not really an issue, but it would be an issue if they migrated to America, and that's what leftists don't understand. We aren't pro-Muslim, we are against Zionist influence in America. That is a different thing that can be separated. Leftists are actually pro-Muslim. Muslims are against everything they believe. They're against homosexuality, abortion, women's rights, everything leftists stand for. Everything I just listed is actually base W Muslims. We're Muslim W. They're against everything leftists believe, though. But for some reason, because they're brown, leftists love them. Sharia law is like the biggest anti-liberal thing ever, and leftists still support Muslims. You don't need to support Muslims to be against Israel. Israel is killing Muslim kids. That's immoral, right? However, that's not the main issue for America specifically. The main issue is that they have influence in our politics. A foreign country should not be able to influence America to do things on behalf of another country or influence American politicians into not doing what is beneficial for America, but rather beneficial to a foreign country. That is the issue. The issue isn't just that brown kids are dying and being colonized. The issue is that Zionism has influence in our country, in our politics, and in almost everything we consume. You consume a Hollywood movie, Zionists probably directed that, and there's probably pro-Israel propaganda or pro-migration propaganda in there, some other Zionist belief. You look at any movie or show criticizing a political movement, what is it criticizing? Is it criticizing the actual oligarchy? Think of the new Superman movie that came out, criticized the oligarchy, but the oligarchy was only the capitalists, the evil capitalists who only wants money, the corporations. The leftists eat it up. These capitalist, evil people who only care about money, it's so short-sighted. I'm not denying that corporations have influence, they do, but to act like the only motivation in the world is money, it's just idiotic. There are greater things in this world than just money. You think the people in power don't understand that? The issue is what these capitalists, or people who built wealth and power in America, support. The biggest transparent one they support is Israel. They aren't serving our interests. It's like every single one of these billionaires and capitalists are all Zionists. I would say 40% of them are actual Zionists, and by Zionists I mean something else. You know what I mean. The issue isn't that they're all just trying to gain money and throw us under the bus for money and power. The issue is what their power supports. Right now, the power supports Israel, which is not Americans' interest. We shouldn't have no power structure at all. That's unsustainable because the average person is a fucking idiot. If you have even power throughout all the people, what are we even doing? You'll have some idiot in downtown Chicago who commits crimes having the same power as Donald Trump. Okay, Donald Trump might be a bad example because he probably shouldn't have power, but you know what I mean. You could be a political genius, and then some guy in downtown Chicago has the same power as you. At least if you're a political genius and gain power, you can influence the world in a positive way. Remove capitalism, and now there's no influence in the world in a positive way. I hate the idea that poor people are the epitome of goodness. It's just untrue. Look at most poor people. There's a reason crime rates are higher in those neighborhoods. There's a reason people don't want to live in poor neighborhoods. Poor people aren't a pillar of goodness. You should show mercy on good people. On poor people, obviously. However, this idea that the homeless person is always good and the rich guy is always evil is probably more so the opposite. More than likely, if you take a random homeless person, a random rich person, like a millionaire, not hundreds of millions, the millionaire is probably going to be better. But leftists think it's the other way around? This really did turn into dogpiling on the leftist view of Israel, but they really are wrong. Then you have the rise of right-wing anti-Zionism. Let's get into this. And the right-wing version is correct. Obviously, if I'm against the leftist view, I'm going to be supporting the right-wing view of anti-Zionism. However, there's a rise of these idiots who are anti-Zionist on the right wing, who are like NatSoc LARPers. They say, H is good and Zionists bad. And that's all of their political views. I'm talking about people like Dan Bilzerian and the Jake Shields of the world. Zionism, bad, big H, good. It's like, dude, you don't understand. They think the only thing you have to talk about in politics is this one issue. The real issue with them is that they don't actually have an ideological pillar. Their whole ideology is Zionists, bad. That's how far their political ideology goes. You see this with Venezuela. A few months ago, Donald Trump kidnapped Maduro from Venezuela. This was a pro-American thing. This was positive. Why? Venezuela was ignoring U.S. sanctions, ignoring the U.S., and working with our adversaries. That is a threat to American sovereignty because of their geographical location. So when you quickly take the leader, kidnap him, and the next in charge submits to you, that helps America's sovereignty. But then you have these guys whose political ideology is Zionists bad, saying, this is for Zionists. That is a leftist view. What are you talking about? This is for America. Maybe you could argue the motivation is for Zionists, but it doesn't matter because it is finally a pro-American policy. We have to be able to say what is pro-America and what isn't. Then you look at the ICE situation, same thing. Another pro-American thing is deporting illegal immigrants and keeping the base of your country the same. What makes your country is the people. Keeping the base the same keeps the country your country and secures American sovereignty, just like Venezuela secures American sovereignty. You look at this ICE situation, leftist protesters impeded law enforcement and felt the consequences. Then you have these guys who ideologically only go as far as Zionist bad, saying ICE is Zionist propaganda now. Not everything is controlled by the Zionists. They have influence, probably the largest influence in America right now. But not literally everything is controlled by the Zionists. It's like the same thing with liberals and capitalists. The capitalists literally control everything. The corporations, they're behind literally everything. No, not every single decision in the world is motivated by money, just like not every decision in the world is motivated by Zionism. That doesn't mean every single thing happens because of Zionists. I stubbed my toe and it's a Zionist. That's just dumb. Specifically with the ICE situation, if you say ICE is controlled by Zionists, are you going to use an actual argument against it? No, because ICE is actually good. It secures America's sovereignty. So there's also this issue with low IQ, right-wing, anti-Zionism. It's not as bad as the leftist view, but it's pretty fucking close because they believe a lot of the leftist views, like the anti-ICE thing and the anti-Venezuela thing, for example. At least they're somewhat right about the why, but it's still fucking brutal. When I say everything people consume, I'm actually being hyperbolic. I'm not being literal when I say everything. I hate when people take everything literally. When you say, it's the Zionists, generally speaking, not literally blaming everything on Zionists, and someone responds, but this one person who worked on this one film isn't Zionist. You're an idiot. I'm being hyperbolic. I'm generally speaking, proportionally speaking, Zionists have the most influence. Do you want me to specifically say the exact percentages every time? You look at the Federal Reserve. Who's that controlled by? It's not controlled by Christians. It's controlled by Zionists. They control printing the money. Then you look at Hollywood. They control the films you see. Then you look at social media. The ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, was founded to free a Zionist rapist from jail. And now they go out and say when things are anti-Semitic or not on social media. When something is anti-Semitic, they get social media to ban it. That is how they censor media, by the way. More specifically, if social media ignores the ADL contacts advertisers. When advertisers are contacted, they pull from that social media. That is how the pressure is applied to censor social media. So they have social media censorship. They have Hollywood directors. They control most artist labels. I'm talking about music now, so they control music, Hollywood, social media, and lobby our politicians. It's brutal how much influence they have. And this is all a transnational group of people who support a foreign country. They have all the power, and in a sense, it's because they have a good IQ. That is true. They have, on average, around the same IQ, maybe higher than European people. The issue really is IQ in a sense, but it's also because of tribalism. They can't do this without being smart while being dumb, but the real deciding factor is tribalism. When they get power and other Zionists gets power, that's the difference between Christians and Zionists. Tribalism, because when they get power, they hand it down to another Zionist. Christians don't do that with Christians. Christianity believes in mercy and treating everyone with love. Talmudic Judaism does not believe that. They believe their people are the chosen people. They believe their people are better than the quote-unquote Goyim. That is the defining difference. It is a difference in culture and tribalism. Even if they are not religious, they grow up celebrating these holidays and being taught by their family that they are better than the Goyim. That creates extreme tribalism. A lot of groups have tribalism. That doesn't make them necessarily immoral. Their religion makes them immoral because Christianity is the only moral religion, but tribalism itself doesn't make them immoral. You see black people who are also tribalistic, Muslims who are tribalistic. White Christians really are the only people who aren't, and that's the problem. That's the downfall of our society. That's why their societies or our societies are being taken. These people are extremely tribalistic. Once they get power, they aren't handing it down to a white Christian, and definitely not a white Christian who isn't a Zionist. They're handing it down to other Zionists. So the issue is a combination of tribalism and IQ. You have other groups who are tribalistic, like black people, but they lack other characteristics. Then you have Zionists who are extremely tribalistic and have one of the best IQs in the world for a group. You have white people who have good IQ, but they are the opposite of tribalistic. They hate themselves. They hate their own culture. You have Asians who have IQ, but their IQ, it's different. They're good with math and technology, and they are more tribalistic than white people, but they're still less tribalistic than Zionists. That's honestly why their average salary, Asians, are higher than white people in America, because they are more tribalistic, and because of this, they care about their culture and actually accept their culture, which obviously includes studying and focusing on school. I'm not saying Asian people have a better culture, but right now, they actually have a culture. White people's culture is being completely eradicated because they're afraid to be tribalistic and be called racist. You can't be afraid of these things. That's really the defining factor, tribalism with IQ. That's what Zionists have. They have both, and the tribalism is very extreme. It's not just like Asians who at least respect their culture. No, it is extreme. They literally believe their people are better and have more value than the Goyim. I see a lot of people say Zionists have to have higher IQ than white people if they are in power. Not necessarily. So yeah, that's just some thoughts on Zionism, I suppose. I thought this video was a long time coming. You know, I always do reference Zionism in my videos. I really don't like how I have to say Zionist on YouTube, but whatever. We're going to be making more videos like this moving forward, so make sure to like and subscribe the video. Elliot Anon, out.